Good day and welcome to Elementary 72 Gaming. So last time I recapped something from the gaming aspect and where things went down in terms of the games. However, I said that Corpse played a major role in all of this, and now with Nihilist Space, I'm about to explain a little bit further about what happened in each stage, where things really are, what things really look like within the game. So I'm really not that active within EVE anymore because I keep getting this. Every time I try to play, there's a massive patch to fix up a problem. Or you can sit on this loading screen for hours at a time and you don't get anywhere. And to be honest, that drove me insane. I'm on for a week, I'm off for a whole week, there's nothing I can do about it. No matter how much I try, it just doesn't work out. I've deleted and reinstalled this game so many times. It's insane to think that I'm doing it just for one final series of builds. And then the content stops. It's just going to be a spotlight here and there, new content here, new content there, end of story. But nonetheless, let's talk about what happened within the game. So Nihilist Space dropped, and Nihilist Space was being amped up by everybody. There are three things that were done wrong with Nihilist Space, three things that were totally not needed for the game. PvP should not have entered LowSec. Now, why is this such a big problem? Well, PvP players already ruined the game 20 times over, right? They ruined it in the first start where they wanted more balance. They didn't want players to be able to defend themselves, because if you jumped in with the fast firing shield eater, they just rip through you with missiles because they're using it for every mission, for every encounter. And it was an all-round good type weapon. So if you assaulted them, they didn't have to worry about anything. They just boost up and move away from you as fast as possible and apply massive amounts of damage to your PvP strategy, and that was a problem. The next thing was when you gate camped, people with missiles were just obliterating your camp, and you had to keep that close range to get your locks with the scramblers, and they were taking out your scramblers very fast. That was another problem for the PvPers. So they had to get out of there. And you're losing these big expensive ships, you're losing Dremel, you're losing Succubus, you're losing all of these very important ships to your players. And they're expensive to make. You're more expensive than the regular ships by about 2 times at the original rate. Now they're about 10 to 20 times the price of the regular class ships. But that's how it went. And they complained about everything and they altered the game. And these weren't the majority, these were the minority. And they ended up going through the roof with profits. And when they went through the roof with profits, they instantly stopped purchasing Plex. And when they stopped purchasing Plex, the game devs needed to start balancing the game again. Obviously, we know about those stories. And that instantly influenced the way that things were changed. Now, with Nihilist Space, we have a similar story. Nihilist Space encroached on the last safe haven for players from PvP, low-sec missions. And when they interfered with this, people just started jumping into missions every time they got a chance. They jump in and they'll attack the player. They won't complete their mission, they'll just kill the player and ruin their chance at earning any ISK. And this is the whole situation. PvP players don't really rat enough. They don't have the chance to rat. They make money off killing players who rat. And when the ratters can't make enough money, the PvPers can't make enough money, and that makes everything tightened down to the fact that you have to purchase Plex. Otherwise, you can't keep up with your routine. So this was what ended up rolling over to everybody. The lag in the game is unbelievably complicated. It affects you everywhere. You've seen me suffering with lag while playing in the game. You've seen me getting booted, kicked. You've seen my ships being half destroyed thanks to lag. You've seen glitches where my ship doesn't warp off. And the devs really don't care. That is the simplest way to put it. They'll see it and they'll say, oh no, yeah, we'll replace what was destroyed, but we won't replace what was left in there. You can't go back in if you lose your only ship. Obviously, they know that's the fact. They want you to go back in, lose more until you have to replace the ship. That's the whole idea. And it's not fair on the average game player. There's so many unfair things that were happening within the game, but I digress. This is far from where I need to be. So with Nihilist Space, they've now opened up low-sec to PvP. That means there's more risk and people can't do their missions. That 300 million which was flowing in and out with whoever was earning their missions from scratch and just knocking them out as fast as possible, doing a 20 million quests and all the stuff. That's now not possible because it's too dangerous to operate them. Going anywhere other than HiSec is too dangerous. So those players who retreated back said, forget it, we're not willing to put in extra time into this game. We're already playing 8 hours a day. If we're gonna go for this year with this low level, we're never gonna get new ships. I'm out. And they started to quit the game. And that's when Nihilist Space lost a lot of players. The heavy course PvP players, the non-nullsec players, started to decrease. The flood into HiSec for the start was just the players coming back to see if there was something worthwhile. They spent a little bit and that was about it. The game started to implode rapidly, and the PvP players were now all stuck in corps that were friendly to each other. They were in corps that wouldn't risk the chance of fighting each other because they have blackmail on each other. Genesis and Silent won't fight because Genesis basically pull the strings on Silent. Silent won't go and eliminate Genesis because they're too afraid of the whiplash from the mediocrity that goes on in there and the allies that they have, and they too afraid to have their big dark secrets dragged out of the closet. Pantheon has similar secrets inside their closet. They don't want it dragged out and aired out across all media. They don't want people to know what happened within some of the corps in that region. All of this here is all that skeletons in the closet, all the dirty laundry, things that people don't want to talk about. Golden Horde had its share of problems. They revealed it out to most people, and you heard about it, you heard about some of the internal strife, but nothing really affected the game that heavily. So overall, all of these things were now are now what's holding the game in its silent corners. And with the expansion to Nihilist Space, you now have way more than double the space, because considering that these corps only operated in Astoria or period basis, they now can operate across an entire map in another region, and there's more in that region, and there's so many places they can set up, and there's nobody to interfere with them when they're jumping across these Nihilist wormholes. So nonetheless, this is exactly what had happened within the game. These players situated themselves on the other side, and now things are very, very spread out. That means that PvP operations have these massive chains where you have to cross across another galaxy, fight in here, come back and defend. Players are too worn out, to be honest. They can't handle that 10 hours where you're going to add another double to that time to make it 20 hours. So they can't handle it, and that's physically impossible for most people. 4 hours of rest and eat in the day isn't enough. You need way more than that. So with all of this, that stress really pushed PvP down. Now PvP can't happen, and the PvP players aren't really getting enough fights. So they're complaining about it, and the complaints are hitting the dev team, and they're now running through to find ways to balance the game again. They're not going to balance it, and that is just the fair issue of the story. Low sec was safe, and it was the last safe haven for earning good income, and it kept the game afloat because some of those players would risk the weekend with the team up in nullsec, or they'd go out and enjoy themselves with their friends every once in a blue moon on a ratting crusade. They go looking for dead spaces, they go trying to make a dead space. Now things are even more difficult. You need someone who's going to be running scanning, so they have to reduce one of their slots. One of their mid slots isn't effective in combat. Basically, too much of a risk, too much of a cost. They've hurt the game to a point where it's literally killed a lot of their current flow. And yeah, they're going to receive these months where they're going to get a big boost in content. They're going to get a big boost from content creators. I'm doing this here not because the content is great. I'm doing this because I had my YouTube start in this game, and I feel that I owe it one last burst of glory with this Final Build series. That is the reason for it. It's not because I'm loyal to EVE. I'm not loyal. I'm doing it because it's where my channel started, and replacing this might be Warhammer or Robot Wars or something. I'm going to find something else to replace it. It'll have a PvP and PvE element, and you'll see me play in those fields. I'm not going to go all crazy and go PvP only. It's too risky. It's not worthwhile. It's too much of that unknown that you don't want to go against. The next thing to note about the game is, right now as things stand, the corpse are where everybody is sitting, and as I said, they have dirty laundry on everybody. They have too many skeletons in the closet. The Catch Coalition, they have the whole story about CNK, what happened inside there with the leadership, how they backstabbed their members, how they betrayed the members, and all of that story. Those are all skeletons in the closet. They backstabbed the lead writer. They didn't like the way he was leading. They didn't like the fact that he put in so much of effort, that he worked so hard to get things done. They took him out of power. That's one of the skeletons sitting in the Pantheon region. Pantheon has some of the corps which formed out from that. They joined into that alliance and they ended up taking over. That's where Trimarch eventually dissolved into. Then you go up a little bit, you've got Genesis. Genesis has all of their skeletons in the closet about how they silenced the content creators, how they played dirty, example with me. Sorry, not this isn't silence, Genesis. Genesis has all of this where they blackmailed me. They literally held ransom to me. They made sure that I couldn't say things in response to where I was in another location. And when you join into their corp, you couldn't report on certain things. You couldn't report in certain manners. The freedom of expression was something they didn't believe in the game, which is quite easy to understand. It's a tyrant rule. You don't allow information you don't want to pass. But the other problem is information still passes regardlessly, and they use it against multiple content creators, and multiple individuals couldn't say this and couldn't say that, and a lot of people dropped out of the communities. If you haven't noticed, we had over 100 content creators. Now I think there's less than 20 who are still on the EVE site. I'm still there because I still listen in and look, but I'm not going to communicate because I'm so upset with that community. They didn't band together. They didn't fight against everything. They fell to the politics, and that was the story at the end of the day. When the corp leaders said something against the content creator, it rippled out through the corp. And sometimes they'll hide away effect and things like that, like what they've done. Like I said, Genesis used blackmail against me. And that's the overall hierarchy thing that happened. And on the other side, you've got the Silent Coalition, Pandemic, all of them. Silent had issues with, for example, me again. This was all to do with the Genesis issue and how they were pulling people in. They offered you a very nice way to come in as a content creator because you brought a community with you. They tried to get you to bring your entire corp over, and then after that when you didn't agree with their way of playing or you didn't want to participate in their wars, they literally boot you out, and they chose whose content meant more to the corp, and they choose who to promote more. And there was another issue within the corp. There was no way for content creators to lively show their things. Example, CNK had a community devote channel. It's still open till today, the original CNK community channel. I can go and post a video there for anything that I want. Computer, PC, and any computer, PlayStation, console, it doesn't matter. And anything can go over there, even if it's mobile platform. It's open for you to put your content. That's what they had for content creators, and they had 3 content creators as far as I remember in the start. Myself, Fire Reaper, and Randy. Myself and Randy, we did 1 or 2 collaborations. We had a little bit of fun here and there, and that was about it. I joined with Silent Pandemic for the reason that there was content creators, and there was this whole thing about having this large content creator community where we could get together, do events together, and get sponsors. Now, that was coming through the corp. Obviously, you didn't expect you had to do it on your own, but that was what was intended by them. It wasn't that they were providing it, it was that you should join them and then you should get your own sponsors and get your own content. And the events would be what you could get regardless of what's happening in the corp. So you had to work around the corp's schedule, and you had to reschedule every time they had an event. And that's where things happened with content creators like me. And there were other corps, as I said, couldn't agree with the terms. They also left the entire alliance. and it drained a lot of players. Because of this movement between the corp and other areas, you got these big groups that came in. I even found a group within Pandemic who I was enjoying and playing with. They were PvE players just like me. And we had a lot of fun, and all of a sudden they got kicked because they refused to show up to, if I'm correct, to the CTAs. And with all of that happening, it caused additional problems. Now this is the corp side. It's just an overall hierarchy of what happened within the corps. And if you look at that, that is the real saltiness that I have against the corps. Now this is made particularly to a comment in my last EVE video from Judge Manny. And this is exactly what you said. You said I was being salty about the leadership. And because of that one statement, I've decided to actually expose whatever I wanted to. As I said, I was being very kind in the last video by not exposing these skeletons. One other thing that I can expose from Genesis side is there was a lot of internal strife with the leadership. Now, I did say that some people attracted more people, they were the majority leaders, they got kicked out, all of this, but there was more. Within Genesis, there were several major problems. CTA leaders were being fought with by general population players. That's because the CTAs were called and they would jump into people who were at work, and they would jump and hound people who were busy in other operations. And this ended up giving a very sour taste to the corp. As a result, they tried to force the leaders of these individual sections, example the Borg, what was it, Salt. They started to put pressure on these corps, and started to tell them that they needed to make sure the players reported for CTAs, and when someone is attacking, they can't just sit around and rest. They need to give it up and come help. And there was a ton of stories. And at the end of the day, that was just one thing. I didn't even mention the fact about ratting. We had to say that we were in an area that we called dibs on other stuff. We had to take screenshots. We had to record everything. And one of the best aspects of that thing for me was whenever anybody did that, I'm like, I'm in the middle of a video. You seriously want to challenge it? And they'd obviously just back away instantly because it's too risky to have a fight like that published, because if you see it live on that video, now you don't have that chance to fight it on both sides. Plus, obviously, even me being a content creator, I wouldn't want to have to publish that, because then I'd have to fight with the corp, because it's negative image for the corp, and they didn't want that. So all of this being put together was some of the things that caused some problems, and there were a ton of other problems. Within a lot of these corps, the budget, for example, for Genesis came from the industrial mains. The industrial mains were the Borg members. So Borg produced the financial backing for Genesis, and in turn, Genesis waged wars with that backing. When they lost that corp, they made a big issue about it. They allowed they allowed Borg to leave Genesis in a somewhat peaceful manner, but they managed to capture a lot of their members by using false propaganda. They started to say that they had a gacha system in place, and they were building a pyramid scheme with their members. And you know what, all of this could be said to be slightly true, but this is the reality behind it. Players had what was called credit within the system. Most of the corps have credit, and when they contributed, they received credit, and when you did missions, you received credit, and the total figures were being used in ways that people didn't understand, because the figures were being drained. And where were they being drained? Into the main Alliance fund. And when they were being drained out of, for example, Borg to Genesis, it was being blamed on Borg's leadership. And when Borg requested, we need this here for our ships, they'd be like, no, you must get your own resources. So eventually they started running bigger and bigger ops, and they started mining even more, and they started having more fun as a team, and they gathered together as a community, and we had a lot of fun, all the way down to the December region, when we even had a industrial ship bash for PvP, just to have fun with it, a quick throwaway of whatever ships you wanted. They even sponsored out retrievers for everybody. There was one player doing it for everyone, and that was it. That was the amount of fun that was available for the Borg, and things just went downhill too fast for a lot of people. The amount of friendliness in the game just started to crash, and small issues blew up into larger issues. People over-exaggerated some small issues. To be honest, I may be over-exaggerating one or two small issues myself, but nonetheless, these issues just became overdone, and propaganda took the front line. Now, obviously, that is something that I can't claim that I'm doing. I can't say that I'm playing propaganda. I'm out of the game. I'm not in that type of situation. I was a leader. I was leading a secret alliance. I was handling some corps and stuff like that there, but everything started to crash too quickly. There was too much of force from the big corps. A lot of people were preferring to side with Golden Horde and Genesis over the PvE Alliance. The PvE Alliance was the whole idea of sitting in low and high sec, and if anything ever happened where the nullsec corps or PvP players encroach on our territory, we'd be able to defend ourselves. That fell apart very, very quickly because we couldn't get our billions, and you couldn't get the billions sitting in high sec all the time, and you couldn't do enough to stop everything from spreading around. Ended up leading into massive failure. The corp that I tried to start up fresh to get the fallouts from multiple corps to join us, they ended up not working out. More people ended up flowing straight into Genesis and Golden Horde, and eventually when I flowed out into Silent for content creator purposes, everything crashed on the inside. PvE's little alliances that I was holding up together ended up falling in on themselves, and everything dissipated. I actually got rid of that server eventually because it was dead, and whatever I was hiding on that server wasn't worthwhile hiding, so I just got rid of it and PvE disappeared. I obviously tried to take over from another leader. He quit the thing because he said as it was, there's too much of problems and PvE was being drained too quickly. They had the overwhelming force in the start. If they really wanted to push, they could have taken over a whole section of now. But at the end of the day, they weren't PvP players, they were PvE players, and that's all they preferred to do. And we ended up with what we ended up with, and everything fell apart. End of story. So that is the story of the current section in nullsec, and you can thank Judge Manny for this video. The reason for all of that information is thanks to her. She wanted to say that I was salty against the leadership, so I showed the salt that I had against the leadership. Hope you all did enjoy, and catch you all in the next one.